This show and this episode is for Gen Zers to help us live lives rooted in love. Because right now, far too many of us are living lives of fear, and I understand why. We have so many problems that we're dealing with at the same time that oftentimes it seems insurmountable to get beyond them, to address them, to solve them. But I know that we can because I believe in our generation. I've seen us do incredible things that previously were viewed as impossible. So let's deal aggressively with these problems by looking at them through the lens of data and research to understand them and then address them. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing three common problems, three common addictions that Gen Zs have. And these addictions, they impact millions of young people across this country. And yes, I mean the word addiction. We're talking about clinical addictions that millions of us are suffering from. I'm going to throw a lot of data at you. Just remember, it's not just a stat on a piece of paper. These are real people suffering with real consequences from real problems. Let's hop into our first problem, our first addiction, pornography addiction. When you look at the data on pornography, there's been a 91% increase in pornography consumption and solo masturbation since the year 2000. 98%, the vast majority of that content is being viewed online by Gen Z. And 69% of us are viewing that content on our smartphones. But the sad reality is that many Gen Zers, especially the younger teens, are not actively seeking out pornography, but are exposed to it due to a lack of regulation and oversight on major social media platforms. Some outright allow erotic, raw content to be published with little to no intervention. Some allow for more soft porn content, and soft porn is content that's sexually suggestive but is less explicit than hardcore pornography. So maybe the actor or actress isn't nude and isn't engaging in sex, but they're playing on lust and they're engaging in a way where a sexual motivation or drive is being installed into the viewer. And it's a daisy chain effect where you get exposed to one video and then suddenly you're watching something completely and totally different. Accidental exposure has increased 58% among teens. In fact, accidental exposure is now nearly universal among teens, among younger Gen Zers. 73% have now consumed pornography, with the average age of exposure just 12 years old, with 52% of both boys and girls having seen violent pornography. Alarmingly, 45% of teens believe that pornography has helpful information about sex, despite research clearly showing that children who are exposed to porn are 3 times more likely to engage in problematic sexual behavior. And this includes sexual assault. This includes things like rape. It's not just teens in the Gen Z demographic that are suffering as a result of watching too much porn and becoming addicted to it. A recent study showed that over 50% of Gen Z college students show symptoms of problematic and clinically addictive use of pornography. And when they were observed, they were stuck in a vicious positive feedback loop where they were depressed, sought pornography, got temporary relief, but quickly became depressed again, leading to more consumption of pornography, leading to more depression, and so on. This is a huge problem for many reasons. One of them being that pornography creates an unrealistic body image and sexual expectation within Gen Zers. It's also associated with problems in relationships that are romantic and non romantic, and this correlates with social isolation. People who watch porn daily in Gen Z double the risk of their depression and increase their risk of anxiety significantly. Now, on this one, I do want to be vulnerable with you and provide some of my personal experiences because This is not just a statistic. This is impacting real people in their real lives. I too was exposed to porn at a very young age, so 13 years or so. And after that first exposure, I quickly became addicted to consuming pornography. Every single day for hours, I would watch pornography, hiding from my family, hiding from my friends, being completely and totally socially isolated. And that had immediate impacts in terms of the friendships that I was able to develop at a young age, but also had long term impacts where I didn't have experience in face to face, people to people communication and otherwise skills. And this lasted for years. And in my view, the only reason I was able to get out of that slump was through the grace of God. So I'm just mentioning this to tell you this is real. It's not something that's silly where we can laugh at it and say, oh, yeah, so and so is watching porn and oh, well. This is a real problem that will stunt their development socially, economically, spiritually, all things of young people. So, if we're going to lean on young people to solve some of the most challenging problems that our society has faced in a very long time coming up into the future, we need to equip them with the best environment, the best tools possible in order to enable them to do so. If you want hard problems to be solved, give them the best tools. The best tools to solve the hardest problem is not spending hours per day on pornography, not because you necessarily choose to, but because you're addicted to it. So just keeping that in mind for pornography, but also the other addictions that we're covering. Now, I want to move on to our next problem, sports gambling and sports gambling addiction. Gen Z shows the highest rates of addiction to sports betting than any other demographic by a mile. 37% of Gen Zers report addiction to sports betting. This is 14% higher than all other demographics combined. Sports betting is most prevalent for the core demographic of Gen Z, which is ages 18 to 24. A recent NCAA survey discovered that 54 to 61% of college students are now gambling on sports. 90% of online sports bettors within the Gen Z age demographic believe that they could make money from sports betting, but 61% engage in chasing losses, which is a clinical indicator of a gambling problem. Chasing losses is when, for example, in week one, you lose $100. So in week two, you bet $200 to make back that $100 loss. But oftentimes, that $200 bet doesn't hit, doesn't pay out. So now instead of being $100 in debt, you're now $300 in debt. And that problem compounds over time. So chasing losses and just sports betting in general is causing huge problems for Gen Z in financial and otherwise terms. For example, 19% of Gen Zers have decreased their credit scores to pay for gambling debts. 18% have maxed out their credit cards to pay for gambling debts, and 18% needed payday loans in order to pay off their gambling debts. Payday loans, for those of you who don't know, are short term, high interest loans, kind of like a shark loan. And they oftentimes have the potential to destroy the financial futures of the individual getting them. 26% of Gen Zers have depleted their savings in order to pay for their gambling debts. 21% struggle to afford to pay for basic necessities like hygiene and food because of their gambling debts. And 20% missed bill payments because of their gambling debts. So, what's all that data mean? That means one out of every five young people are financially struggling, are in debt because of a addiction to sports gambling. And it's not just impacting them and their financial futures, it's impacted those around them. 22% report that betting caused emotional distress for their families. 30% have had somebody come forward in their lives and say, hey, so and so, I think you have a problem. And this is especially problematic because the trends are not looking promising. More and more college aged and older individuals are engaging in sports gambling. And the studies show that college age individuals develop gambling problems at rates of 6 to 8% compared to 1 to 2% of adults. So people who are gambling in college, who are doing sports betting in college, they're 4 or 5 times more likely to become addicted than older adults. And this is not a problem just for college age and older Gen Zers. This impacts even younger ages. Ages 12 to 17 are now showing gambling related problems, with 10 to 14% of high schoolers now at risk. This problem and addiction does not fall solely on the shoulders of Gen Z. Technology and marketing efforts by multi-billion-dollar corporations have made the problem far worse. 95% of sports betting now happens through mobile apps, and these mobile apps are huge now. And the industry is offering lucrative and enticing marketing strategies that specifically target Gen Zers. So an example of this is $150 in bonus bets for the first $5 wager. If you don't have that much money, if you're a college kid, putting down $5 and getting $150 in quote unquote free bets is hugely appealing to you. These multi-billion-dollar corporations, they know exactly what they're doing. It is no mistake that 96% of people aged 11 to 24 years old have seen some kind of marketing material from these gambling outlets in the past month. And these mobile apps are constantly making adjustments to their platforms to entice more of the Gen Z audience. A great example of that is now you can do real time betting on whatever match you're watching. So if you're watching a football game and as team one scores a touchdown, that changes the likelihood of team one winning or losing the game. And you can bet according to how the odds are changing real time. So the bottom line is that sports gambling is a huge issue for Gen Z financially, socially, emotionally, and otherwise. And unfortunately, Gen Z is currently in an environment that is constantly marketing to them to gamble and is providing a lot of incentives to do so. The next problem is a huge driver of mental unrest and is a cause of a lot of suffering for Gen Z, and that is social media and general screen addiction. Gen Z's digital dependency is severe. 83% of us self-report that we have an unhealthy relationship with our phones. And on average, we're spending 6 hours per day, 1/4 of our day on screens. 49% of us, so almost half, feel addicted to our devices. And 47% of us wish that TikTok was never invented. So we have a awareness of the negative impacts of social media use, but we can't stop consuming it because we're addicted. And I don't throw that word addicted lightly. I mean clinically addicted. The research on addiction relating to social media is now very well known and mature. When anybody, regardless of generation, interacts with social media, dopamine is released throughout the brain to encourage repeated use of it. After hours of being on social media, dopamine is then depleted from the brain. And the only remedy or the only fix is another dopamine inducing activity, which is often social media use. So it creates this vicious perpetual cycle where the only way to feel good in that state is to remain on social media. If everybody in Gen Z was smoking cigarettes for 6 hours per day, it would be a health crisis. But for some reason, we're not treating social media in the same lens. And that's especially concerning because the impacts of social media they're real. Social media warps the real perception of what's normal versus not, where all we see are two extremes of really good and really bad. Think of the environment that Gen Z is currently in. We're isolated. We don't have many face-to-face interactions. Most of the interactions that we have are online on social media, which really isn't much of an interaction. It's more of a comparison game. You know, are you at the top of the status? Are you in the most extreme category of status? Are you a millionaire? Are you a billionaire? Are you the most beautiful, the most handsome, the most successful? And if you're not, if you're in the 99.999% that don't meet that standard, well, you're unworthy and you need to somehow, some way improve your life. I mean, this is just crazy to me. Like, it would be as if we're spending hours per day watching the film Superman over and over, and we're comparing our lives to Superman's abilities, Superman's life, Superman's responsibilities. And if we're not upholding to his super strength when he flies up into the atmosphere and hangs out with the sun, then somehow, some way, we're failing as a generation. And I know that may feel silly, but that's really what's going on. Young boys are looking at these massive testosterone filled men who are bench pressing 400, 500, 600 pounds, akin to that of an NFL superstar. Young women are looking at other young women who have silently done plastic surgery to make their appearances the way that they are. So it's impossible to meet the standards of beauty, to meet the standards of intellect, to meet the standards of financial and otherwise success that are marketed constantly on social media. But if you watch that content many hours per day, day in and day out, at some point you're going to start believing the lie that you're not good enough. Outside of the comparison trap that social media presents, just the amount of time being spent on the platform is a problem. As I mentioned, 6 hours per day is being spent on screen. So Gen Zers are spending 25% of their lives in these online forums and communities that are not good for their health and are often not productive in their lives in terms of creating an economic future for themselves, in terms of creating social connections that are meaningful and are lasting and otherwise. So we can either blame Gen Z and blame each individual, or we can look at the millions of Gen Zers that are struggling and say something is wrong with the system, something is wrong with the environment that we're placing Gen Z in. And remember, a significant portion of Gen Zers are not yet adults. The Gen Z age gap is 13 to 28 years old. So if we can't protect our teens, then what are we doing? The truth is that we live in a society full of highly engineered addictive products, services, and environments that are specifically designed to capture and monetize young people, capture and monetize Gen Zers. And the scope and the severity of these problems, it's real. It's impacting millions of our youth. Facing one of these problems is undeniably challenging. Facing all of them can feel insufferable. So it's no wonder then why so many of us Gen Zers are hopeless about our lives right now and our futures, because millions of us are dealing with these problems, and yet society, online and in person, continues to tell us that either these problems, these addictions aren't real, they're imaginary, or they're ones that we've created because somehow, some way, we're abnormally weak. And I'm here to say enough is enough. I'm here to say the truth. The truth is that oftentimes Gen Zers have not caused these problems, they've inherited them. We're stuck paying the credit card bills of the debts, of the mistakes, of the decisions that previous generations have made. And we've grown up in an environment where those generations have decided to create highly addictive avenues to profit off of our backs. And we're stuck holding all of these burdens, and we're stuck feeling like we're alone in doing so because of the narrative in the culture right now. Enough is enough. So if you're a Gen Zer, listen to me, please. You're not alone. The problems that you're dealing with, likely millions of other people like you and me are dealing with them. You're not weak. You're not an outcast, despite your differences. And despite all of these narratives, these ridiculous, false lies that you've heard and have been told, you should have hope for your future. Because if nothing else, I believe in you. As crazy as it sounds, I love you. I love how unique we all are. I love how we're pushing boundaries. I love how we're learning to express ourselves in these new ways, bringing forward new ideas. I love our generation. And I believe in you regardless of your failures, perceived or real. I believe in you regardless of your hardships. I believe in you despite all the times that somebody has dropped you in your life. Somebody neglected you. Somebody abandoned you. Somebody abused you. Somebody made you feel unworthy. I believe in you despite all of that. I believe in you despite all the times that you've dropped yourself, that you've doubted yourself and your abilities and your potential. I believe in you. I believe in you enough to make this show. And it's my sincere hope to be a voice of reason, a voice of light in this discussion that we find ourselves in the culture. These problems, not only are they real, not only are they backed by legitimate research and data, they're impacting millions of us. And regardless if we have caused or inherited these problems, we need to address them. Because what's happening right now in the masses, it's not beneficial for your life or mine. It's unfair, I agree. But what's our alternative? So let's not understand them in the context of Joe Schmo on social media. Let's look at these problems through the reality, through data, through the truth of them. And once we know that, once we know what these problems really are, what their root causes really are at the individual and societal scale, we can find a solution. Solutions that don't just sound good on the campaign trail, but actually work to improve your life. And that's really what I want to do. I'm not doing this to make money. I don't care if it's 1 view or 1 million views, sincerely. Whoever you are, I want to be a force of good in your life. I named this show the Gen Z Love, Gen Z Love, because we need more love in our lives. We got enough fear. We got enough doom and gloom mentality. Let's have some love, and not the kind of love that you see in a Disney movie or a 2010 pop song. The kind of love that gives you the courage to wake up every day, and despite if that day is raining or shining, be grateful for it. One of my favorite quotes of all time comes from the Bible, and it says, "Today is the day the Lord has made." And so we will rejoice and be glad in it. And sometimes that day is you got to bury your father, your mother. Sometimes that day is your wedding day. But regardless of the day, having the courage to wake up and rejoice and be glad in it, think of what that would do in your life. So let's understand these problems together and we'll address them together. You're not alone. So I invite you to come with me on this journey. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, whatever you believe, I don't care. Come on, come with me.